Now it's time for Inspirational Women, and my guest, Jeanette Thebeau, Executive Director and Chief Acceleration Officer for IWL Foundation. That's Integrated Women Leaders. Jeanette and her team have done a ton of research, and it has culminated in a white paper. It's not just 16 cents, a new look at what the gender wage gap really means for women. Important to keep in mind, it's not just for and about women, of course, but really for society as a whole. Jeanette Thebeau, good morning, and thank you so greatly for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Kate. I'm really excited to be here and excited to talk about women in the workforce.
Absolutely. A really important, critical topic. And in your work with Integrating Women Leaders Foundation, I love the fact that, yes, you're the executive director, but I love this part. You're the Chief Acceleration Officer. To me, that's a new title, name, and I think it's just fabulous.
Thank you. I think I might be the only Chief Acceleration Officer in the world because I made that title up to go along with our mission, which is to accelerate the advancement of all women to drive individual and organizational growth and impact. So we are about speeding up this equity that we're going after and making things more fair for women in the workplace.
So I would then lean to your being front and foremost Chief Acceleration Officer. Yep. That it just fits so well and makes so much sense. It captures what you are all about and why. It's amazing. This is almost 2025. We're a quarter of the century into this new millennia, and that we're still talking about equity in wages in the workforce for women. And we're not just talking a little bit. The wage gaps are just astounding.
The wage gap is astounding, and we just have this new white paper out. It's not just 16 cents. And basically what we were looking to do here is to stop talking about cents on the dollar. Because when people talk about women making 84 cents on the dollar, it doesn't sound that bad. It's just 16 cents. Well, it's not 16 cents when you look at this across an entire career. And it's especially not 16 cents for women of color who are in a worse position. We're not looking at 84 cents on the dollar for them. We're looking for, or at 66 cents on the dollar for a Black woman and 52 cents on the dollar for a Latina woman. And so that gap gets a whole lot bigger when we start to look at it over years and over an entire career.
And we need to realistically look at it as the lifetime, as the career, because that's just what life is. You know, I'm hearing more and more conversations about Social Security and retirement and how we need to take more charge of it. Well, if women are making half that amount, we're talking about a Black woman, a Latina woman, where's the equity? Where's the fairness there?
Correct.
Right.
That is exactly correct. And you know, this has been, these numbers have been out there for years, and people talk about, well, we'll get to equity in 150 years or whatever. Those numbers change a little bit. They go up and down a little bit, but we're talking a century plus away. So multiple generations will be dealing with this long after we're gone, still trying to get to equity for women. And that's just unacceptable.
Yes. And then there's the problem. If we look at the past as to what that means when we take so long to catch up, I don't know that it's really possible. It has to start now. Changes have to happen. Shifts need to be made so that there is that kind of equity and more of an opportunity. Otherwise, I think that gap will only get larger.
Exactly. And that is a lot of what we were trying to do with this white paper, too, was just put some numbers out there that got people's attentions and gave women in particular a voice to go into their company, their organization, and say, hey, can we talk about this here? Or we want to talk about this here. We want to level set. We want to at least see transparent information on how we're doing relative to other companies, and also relative, within the company, women versus men. So what this white paper really aimed to do was we took 15 different sectors and we looked at what might be a typical career path for a woman coming out of college all the way through retirement. And look, this isn't perfect math. This is, we made assumptions on, these are the different levels that someone might be in a law enforcement career, in an operations career, hospitality, retail, marketing, IT, et cetera. So we looked at a typical career and typical years in different positions. And then we just ran the math for white women and women of color. We ran the entire career out. And our numbers are huge, and they're also conservative because in addition to women not making as much money as men, they're not promoted into the same positions that men are promoted into. And so our numbers are conservative, and we are talking about $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, over $1 million in some careers for all women in aggregate. And then when we look at those Black women and Latina women, millions of dollars in differentiated dollars in terms of what they would have made if they were a man. And that is crazy. These numbers really need to grab people's attentions because there's a lot that women could do with a couple $1 million. And we went into that in the white paper too. We had a little fun with some of the things that women could do with the money if they had actually earned the same amount as a man.
It's just astounding. So you've given that broad picture. Let's look at a couple of the individual career paths and say what those specific numbers are, because when I saw them, I was just blown away.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Why don't you pick a couple for me, and then I'll give you levels on, and it just kind of gets worse and worse and worse.
Yes. Well, like in the case of a primary care doctor, we're looking at medicine. They're doing the same kind of work. And to see, again, the disparity is astounding.
It's astounding, yeah. So in aggregate there, we're looking at $1.5 million. White women, 1.6. Asian women, about $100,000. And then Black women and Latina, 4.3 million and $4.6 million less. Now, again, these are aggregates with a number of assumptions. Some states do better than others. Some companies do better than others. So this is not meant to be, anything where someone can walk in and say, I just saw this report and I am making $4,649,728 less than the man. That's not what this is about.
Right.
It's about showing how big these numbers can be on average and saying whether or not I'm plus or minus 10, 15, 20% of this, that's not what this is about. This is about that number being so huge in the first place. Wherever you are relative to that average, it's a big number.
Yes. It really is so shocking. And it should shock us that we really wake up and say, no, this is not right. And that's where I guess the allyship comes in. Right, Jeanette?
You know what? That is exactly right. And it is also looking at companies who have seen this as a problem and said, we're going to do something about it. And, I call out Mark Benioff here with Salesforce. He had a couple of women who went to him, I believe it was 2017, who said, we have a wage discrepancy. And he said, let's see what it looks like. And they ran all the numbers within the company, and he made it right to the tune of a lot of money. And then they have put processes in place to make sure that it doesn't revert back to where it was. And so we can do this one company at a time. And every company that starts to get on board with this is a company now that women want to go and work for. And so I think there can be some pressure applied just by seeing one company at a time do this, because other companies are going to realize to get the best workers, they're going to need to do this too. So in order to be competitive, they're going to need to get to equity. So back to your question about allyship. this is actually absolutely where allyship comes in. And for us, we do a lot of allyship work. We started talking about allyship before it was even a word. Technically speaking, allyship became a word for dictionary.com in 2021. Mm-hmm. It was actually the word of the year in 2021, and it was the first time that a new word was dictionary.com's word of the year, which is kind of exciting. Now, if you type allyship in right now, you're still going to get spell checked. So it's still a really new concept. A lot of people don't necessarily even understand what it means. They come to us and say, tell me the difference between allyship and mentorship and sponsorship, and happy to, do all of that. But it's kind of taking all of the work that everyone did after, George Floyd was a point in time, right, where we had a lot of companies that went in and said, hey, we need to do some more training in our organizations. And pretty quickly, most of the world in the U.S. got on board with really doing unconscious bias training. So most of the companies here have done that. Our research shows that about 85% of people in corporate America have done some kind of unconscious bias training. The issue is, what do you do now that you know you have bias? Like, we are humans. We all have bias. It is part of who we are. But then you get stuck. Okay, I know that I have this bias. What do I do with it? And that's what allyship work is about. It's helping people to take action, to recognize their bias, and then do things that mitigate devaluing behaviors to women and other intersectional groups.
Really encouraging to be open to having the conversations. It's a process. We can't be expecting that, we're going to do it right, but to give ourselves that kind of benefit of the doubt situation, to be willing to work at it rather than just take a stance and cross your arms and lean back.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a journey, and it's a journey that never ends. We have been training on allyship since 2018. We've trained over 1,000 male allies for some very large companies. I know you've got Amazon in your backyard. They've worked with us quite a bit. In fact, one of our first partners to bring us in. And it's been interesting because we use gender as the gateway to start talking about these conversations. But allyship is about all of us using whatever privilege we have to stand up for other people and to create a more equitable workplace. And this is where I think I see a lot of the misinformation out there. This is not about giving people a leg up. Mm-hmm. That's not even what the E&I is about. It's not about saying, let's give someone an extra chance. It's about making things a fair playing field for everyone. So, for instance, we had a speaker that came to one of our conferences, and she talked about this analogy of a doorway. And she said, mentorship and mentors, they shine a light on the doorway so that you can see what the opportunities are. And sponsors kick the door in for you. They kick the door in, and they give you that opportunity to walk through the door. And so then we said to ourselves, well, what does that mean for allyship? And the analogy with the doorway we came up with is that allyship is about making sure that we all have access to the same doors, that someone is not trying to squeeze through a mouse-sized door in the back alley and everyone else is walking through the front door, but that we all have access to that same door in the first place. And so, it is about just giving everyone the same chance. And then their performance will determine where they go from there.
That is such a great metaphor. Thank you for sharing that with us, Jeanette, because I think that really clarifies it, simplifies it so that it's like, yes, okay, we can do that. Rather than sometimes maybe it does feel vague for people, but I think you've made it so much more clear.
Well, right. And it's also about, how we act and show up on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. There are opportunities every single day to be an ally for someone if you're aware of what's going on. And so a lot of this starts with recognizing microaggressions. We do an annual research project called State of Allyship in Action. And it's not dissimilar from what McKinsey Lean In does. They have kind of the gold standard in our marketplace for research. Their Women in the Workplace study is amazing. We ask a lot of the same questions, but we not only ask them of women, we also ask them of men, because we want to see what the perceptions are, and we want to see where the gap comes in what women say is happening in the workplace, and then what men say they see. And the difference is massive. We get into very specific behaviors. We ask about 14 different kinds of microaggressions to see what women say, they're experiencing. The top 5 every year are the same: being interrupted or spoken over more often than others, having their judgment questioned in their area of expertise, being asked to do the office work. So this is a big one, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of times women will talk about, we're sitting in the meeting, and if a woman doesn't start the Zoom call, it doesn't get started. Or the women, some woman is asked to take notes or schedule meetings, even though they're all peers in the meeting. The fourth one, not being given credit for contributions made. Yes. And then the fifth one is being overlooked for a promotion or stretch assignment. And those are the top 5. Women say those are happening to them. 74% of women say those are happening to them. When we ask men if those are happening to women, we get varying degrees based on the microaggression, but we're talking about, low double digits. And then if you are a woman of color, there's an additional set of microaggressions that women of color face. And so, it all adds up. And these teeny tiny little things, we refer to as sort of death by 1,000 paper cuts. Mm. It's not the one time in the meeting that someone spoke over you, or, I think a lot of women will recognize this, where they've spoken up and they've had an idea in a meeting, and then the meeting keeps happening, and then a man may say the same idea, and now everyone's like, oh my gosh, Bruce, that's great. That's wonderful. Well, the opportunity there for allyship is for someone to jump in and say, you know what, hey, Bruce, that is a great idea, but did anyone notice that Kelly had that same idea a couple of minutes ago? So, great idea, everyone. Or great idea, Kelly. And so, allyship, it's noticing the little moments, these micro moments where there is a chance to really see the devaluing behavior and do something about it. So it doesn't have to be grand gestures. It can be just every day seeing those moments and standing up and showing up. And this is a really interesting one, Kate. When we did the first year of our research, one of the things that we found that this isn't just about men standing up for women, or, all of us standing up to people of color. Some of the biggest issues come from women not advocating for other women, not being allies to other women. And so we have an opportunity to do a better job of being allies to each other.
Yes. Yes, I think that is so critically important, because I think we've all experienced it somewhat in the workforce, where we can just be too competitive, or competitive in a negative way, rather than being there to support each other and encourage each other forward.
That is absolutely right. In fact, you bring up a really good point, that when we first noticed this showing up in our research, these women saying, well, yeah, you know what, I think women could do a better job. We wanted to ask women, why do they think that other women aren't doing a good job? And one of the things we were curious about was that this, we believe that other women need to figure it out just like we did. We want to be the only woman in the room. We want to, feel that competition is real, and if there's only one space, I want it to be me. The interesting thing is that the number one thing that popped up when we asked women is that they said a lot of women hold the same biases that men do against women. And so we tend to let all these biases build up in our own head about our own gender. And that's, that's a thing to really noodle on psychologically, right?
Yes.
That we have these same biases, and how do we stop ourselves from doing the same thing that men do?
Yes. And why are we allowing ourselves to go down that path?
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
So many critical things to think about. And yet, with the work that you and your team, Jeanette, have done on this, really synthesizes so much and gives us a great platform to work from, with, and move forward.
That is exactly right. So for us, it's about putting the information out there, really asking people to spread the word, right? Have the conversations. That's where this has to start, is that someone needs to be able to walk in and say, hey, it's not just 16 cents. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars over time. It's a much bigger deal. And then we also, put in the white paper some best practices and some things that we think companies can do. Number one, be more transparent about your pay and your policies, right? If a company is transparent, they're not trying to hide from this. They may or may not know how bad things are, but that's the first place to start. You know what? How are we doing on this gender wage gap? What does it look like within our own company? A second thing, regular pay audits, right? Building this into the operational plan so that we're making sure that at the very least we know what the situation is, and hopefully are moving toward reconciling it. Having internal campaigns that are about equal pay for equal work, and I think here's where we can look to employee resource groups to maybe take this on as a challenge and make sure that they are raising this up the ladder to their C-suite or to their leadership to say, hey, we've been discussing this within our group, and we want to bring this to your attention. I don't think anyone's necessarily suggesting that there are leaders out there who are intentionally, hey, let's make sure that we only pay women, 84 cents for every dollar that a man is making. I don't think anyone's out there intentionally trying to do that. It's just been done for so long that it's just part of the culture, and it's just part of the way things are run. So until somebody stands up and says, let's look at this at our company and let's bring this up and let's try to make a change, nothing's going to happen. Other things, parental leave policies. I mean, looking at flexible work arrangements for women. One of the key biases that we see against women in the workplace is this, maternal bias. People just create this idea in their mind that women are less committed, or, a woman's not going to want to come back to work after she has a baby, or whatever that happens to look like. And, COVID did a lot to make flexible work something available to all of us. But you'll find, and I think most people can probably relate to this too, men and women, that when a woman says, you know what, I'm not going to be available for the next 2 hours because I'm taking my kid to the doctor, people kind of roll their eyes and they think, oh, yeah, well, she's just not committed. But if a father said that same thing, I'm not going to be available for the next 2 hours because I'm taking my kid to the doctor, he gets a pat on the back. Yeah. What an amazing father he is. Look at him showing up for his kid. And I'm not saying that this is always the case. I'm saying that these are things that we see happening that are just part of this whole human bias, and these are the things we need to recognize and try to reconcile. So that's, again, where the allyship comes in. And, bless you for hanging in here with me. I'm obviously on my soapbox. I get really excited talking about all of this.
But Jeanette, that is why we're having this conversation, because you have this important information to share with us. So go for it.
Okay. Well, I think that all, just takes us to creating a more inclusive culture. I mean, that's what this really all, gets to. An inclusive culture where everyone has the same opportunity, and then it's up to them to perform and to do their job and to show they're the best candidate for the next role, right? So I think that's kind of the bow on all of this is, how do we create a more inclusive culture where we can get the best out of everyone? And, the research shows that when you have a diverse workforce, you do better in terms of all of the key metrics, right? The company growth, the revenue, the profitability. It benefits from having diverse people in the organization who bring different backgrounds and different perspectives. And who doesn't want their company to have a stronger performance or, more success?
Yes. Yes. We just need to see it more broadly in that way, that we all have something to contribute. I think of it sometimes very simplistically as a puzzle. And if you're missing, a piece, it's not complete. You miss a few pieces, it's definitely not complete. So we could see the value of every individual. And I think that in seeing the value in a person really does something for them energetically, that they want to even do better and excel.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. That's exactly right. And when we're standing up and supporting one another, we do get the best out of each other. Mm-hmm. Because when you leave your work day and you feel beaten down and you feel like you've had a bunch of paper cuts all day,
yes.
I mean, that takes a lot of energy. But if you leave that work day and you think, you know what, didn't get so many cuts today, and when I did, somebody stood up for me and we kind of patched that thing right up, I can't wait to go back to work tomorrow.
Yes.
And I will also say this one other thing sort of about the performance metrics. When we go in and we talk to men who are strong allies, and there are a lot of them out there, by the way, there are a lot of really amazing men as allies, women as allies, people in all walks of life who do show up for one another. When we ask them, why are you doing this? Is it the business proposition? Is there a personal reason? Most of the time, men in particular will say it's both. When you really dig deep, you'll find that most of them will say, you know what, I have a daughter, or I have a niece, or I've seen my sister go through this, or my mother was a strong influence on me, and I know what it was like for her in her work environment. And usually there's some piece of this that is very personal, and they want things to be better for those females in their lives.
Make it personal, and it really can, not absolutely, but typically can make a world of difference.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yes. Oh, well, you are certainly making a world of difference, I believe, Jeanette Thebeau. I appreciate your passion and your drive for bringing this forward, doing this research. So let's mention where people can go for more information, find that white paper.
Yep. So they can go to IWL Foundation.org, and that information is all there. If anyone is particularly interested in allyship, you can go to IWLAllin.org, and we also have lots and lots of free tools and resources, assessments that people can take. We have a discussion starters card deck that people can use. We have a lot of great resources if you're interested in doing more with allyship, or just reach out and connect with me. You can do that through either one of those websites as well, and I'd be happy to help anybody out who wants more information.
That is perfect. And it's in sharing that kind of generosity that really, again, makes a world of difference, helps us to all learn, engage together, and really move onward and upward.
That's absolutely right. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Kate. I really appreciate you giving me a voice to talk about all of this today.
Well, you are a strong voice and such an ally yourself. So I am so grateful that we were able to make this connection and share this invaluable information. So thank you greatly, Jeanette Thebeau.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of a very full hour of Inspirational Women with Jeanette Thebeau and Sunday Morning Magazine with Gail Lukasik. I'm Kate Daniels, your host, and I greatly appreciate your sharing this hour with me and these special guests. For details you might have missed or information you'd like to know, please just send me an email, kated@warm1069.com, and I'll get right back to you. Also, if you'd like to listen again or to share these important stories with your family and friends, find the podcast on our Warm 1069 webpage. Just click on the Listen tab, then Podcasts, then either of the show names, and then look for the guest names. I now wish you and your family a day of considering our own stories as we plan for the holidays and the year ahead. Have a week of the same, and then please plan to join me again next weekend for another hour of Sunday Morning Magazine and Inspirational Women on Warm 1069. Good morning.